Today I'm going to show you the 3 different types of nodes in Davinci Resolve and how to use them to take your color grading to the next level. Let's take a look. Easily, without a doubt, the best thing about Davinci Resolve is its color grading capabilities. I mean, it used to be a color grading tool before it became a full-blown NLE, so it better be good in the color department. And one of the best things about the color grading system is that it's a node-based system. You don't have to use adjustment layers and all that stuff. It's just a lot easier to keep track of, a lot easier to really just separate everything that you're doing if you know how to use it correctly. Now, there are 3 different types of nodes in Davinci Resolve that you can use to really bring your color grading to the next level. I'm going to show you exactly how to use all 3 of them. I'm going to take you through an entire grading process, which means we've got a lot of ground to cover. So let's just jump into Davinci Resolve and get started. All right, let's do this. We're in the Davinci Resolve color page, and the first type of node that I want to go over is the serial node. I've actually already used a serial node to do my primary correction, so we're all good to go there. Now, the way that serial nodes work is they always grade based on the node that came before it. So if I come over into my nodes, I hit Alt-S to add a serial node. Let's say I want to push some blues into that image. I can do that like so. Now, let's say I want to correct those skin tones because I don't quite like the way that they look with all the blue on them. I can hit Alt-S again. I can come into my qualifier, make sure that my selector tool is selected, and we can go ahead and grade those skin tones a little bit. Let's go ahead and denoise that, a little bit of clean black, a little bit of clean white, blur the radius, and that's looking pretty good right there. Add a power window so I can isolate the skin. And I can go ahead and correct the skin tones right there, maybe push a little bit of saturation. Now, if I disable that power window and I disable my highlights, once again, I have some nice, correct skin on a nice blue image, and we're good to go. Now, here's the problem. Because serial nodes always grade based on the node that came before it, if I come back to this node where I push the blues in and I decide, you know what, I don't want it to be so cool, I actually want this to be a nice warm image, so I push some orange in here, you'll notice that my skin has changed, and that's because if we come back over to the skin grade node, activate the highlights, you can see I've no longer graded my skin. I've now graded this portion of the wall, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a parallel node. Now, if I go ahead, delete my skin grade, I'm going to push blues back into this image because honestly, I think it looks a little bit better towards the blue side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this node, go down to add node, and hit add parallel. And now what I have are 2 nodes that are both being graded based off of my primary correction. So come over here, go back into my qualifier, selector tool, let's go ahead and select those skin tones again, clean that up quite a bit, denoise, clean black, clean white, blur my radius, should be good there. Let's push some saturation. Not quite so much saturation. Now, if I turn my highlights off, my skin is closer to correct, but it's still blended with that blue background, and that's how parallel nodes work. The great thing about parallel nodes is no matter what I do with my background, if I want to push orange in there, or maybe even just because maybe I want to push some greens in there, I always have my skin tone selector, so I can go back and I can correct my skin tones in my image. So that's the good news. I always have that key there, so I can always correct my skin tones. The problem is this is a blended image. So when I correct my skin tones, I'm losing some of that green. So let's say you don't want that. Let's say you don't want to lose your background color at all. You don't want it to be a blended image. What we can do is add a layer node. So let me go ahead. we're going to start this all over. I'll keep my primary correction. But we're going to start over and we're going to use a layer node. And we're going to get a nice, good teal and orange grade on this image using layer nodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt-S. I'm going to add a new serial node. And then I'm going to right click on that node. I'm going to hit Add Node and Add Layer. Next thing I'm going to do, same as before, is I'm going to key out my skin tones. That's looking good right there. Now if I come back to my background node, I'm going to push some teal into my shadows, some orange into my highlights, and you'll notice that my skin tones haven't changed at all, and that's because the layer nodes work the same as a parallel node, but they don't blend the images together. This will always be two separate images. So I can come over here, and if I wanted to, I could push some saturation. Let's go ahead and turn the highlights off so you can really see what I'm doing. I'm going to push the saturation in the skin tones. It's not affecting the rest of my image at all. Let's reset the saturation. Now the only problem with this is the skin tones kind of stand out from the rest of the image. They don't look natural. So what I want to do is actually blend this in just a tiny bit. So I'm going to come over to my key window, and I'm just going to bring this key output back to 0.8, 80%. And now the skin's a lot more blended in with the image. We can continue on with our grade. Let's go ahead and add some contrast. Actually, the first thing that I want to do is bring down the saturation in that dress. So let's go ahead and we're going to key out this dress. Turn the highlights on. Make sure our selector tool is good to go. Feather that out. That should be good right there. And what we're going to do is bring down our saturation until we're where we want it to be. Turn off the highlights. That looks pretty good right there. Let's go ahead and move on. Gonna come over into our curves, change this over to waveform, add a little bit of contrast to our image. It's looking good right there. Last thing we're gonna do is come over to our Luma versus saturation, desaturate the blacks and shadows. And then just to make it look nice and cinematic, let's go ahead and put a little bit of a crop on here. So now we've got our skin where we want it. We've got our color grade where we want it. Everything is exactly where we want it. Now, just for good measure, so you can see where we came from, here is my original image, and then here's the grade. Now, nodes are super powerful tools and they can really help you out, but they're not gonna do that if you don't know the basics of color correction and color grading. Now, I've created a video for you that should help you get started with that. You can check that out right here. And if you found this useful and you wanna learn more about video editing, camera gear, and how to make better videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next video. Go watch it now.